So I hope everyone's having a great day of action so far. Thank you for joining us for our second webinar today. The first being transport this morning, which is really good and insightful. So I'm Nathan Swinson-Buller, co-founder of Sustainability Partnerships, along with Georgia Halston, who's not present on this webinar. I'm joined today by Philip Shelley, who is chair of the NHS Food Review, and Andrea Rymer, who is a dietitian with the Vegan Society. Just a quick one about the Sustainability Partnerships, for those that you don't know us. We took over the campaign back in October 2020, formally started by Scott Buckler in 2013, which was kind of based around the Day of Action itself. Since then, Georgia and I took it over, we've rebranded, kind of give it a new direction, and our aim is to kind of bring together innovative companies who might not get a look in on the NHS supply chain and kind of help the NHS achieve their overall ambitions to become net zero. Yes, so it's going great. We've had various webinars this year on clean air, Earth Day itself, and now we're on to nutrition, which nutrition is something maybe people don't consider to be carbon intensive, but I've been doing a lot of research recently, and it's quite frightening just on how carbon intensive it actually is, food production, and it's a worry for globally. It's a massive global concern and contributes massively to global warming. The NHS itself, I believe, is responsible for about 6% of its emissions comes from food and waste. So it's very important that it is addressed by the NHS and by the individuals of the NHS themselves. So on that note, I'm no expert, but Philip is, so I'm going to hand you over to him to start his presentation. I will just share my screen, which contains Philip's presentation. Can you see that? Just get a thumbs up from the panel.
Yeah, just need to go back to the first slide. Thank you.
All right.
All right.
There we go.
Brilliant. Thank you, Nathan.
You're welcome.
Welcome, everybody. It's great to be with you, and it's fascinating to be linked with Andrea and speaking obviously around food, around the NHS and around nutrition, and hopefully some of the areas that we share today will be part of the messaging of the perspective of the food review, our current development, plans for the future, and how are we strategically placed for a sustainable future. We know that the food review was launched through the listeria outbreaks, unfortunately, but it has given us that opportunity to widen the scope around nutrition, around safety, and around the quality of food. And this is inclusive of patient, staff, and visitor catering throughout the NHS. The next slide, please. So right from the start of the review process, it was vital to involve those that have a wider influence. This is integral to ensure that, one, we have the analysis that will help sort of shape our future. The message of quality over quantity, that allows us to break the mold and transform culture and behavior that has certainly held back progress in healthcare food that we so long for. And what does quality actually mean? Well, I believe there needs to be a desire and a backing to have regional and national competitions for NHS chefs. So what must we do to do that? Well, let's encourage participation. Let's have an ambition. We know that NHS chefs are used to be back of house. So it's important that we give our colleagues the confidence to participate and develop their front of house attitude. It's critical as well that we educate the public. How can we talk and debate around allergies and dysphagia diets and empowering recovery if the public aren't sure what NHS catering and chefs do? Other parts of quality, having a national training program is key to develop our current and our new caterers. If healthcare is to push back the boundary, we mustn't accept second best. Our patients, staff, and visitors deserve the optimal service. And I think that the training program will be launched in the next couple of weeks. Other parts of quality, well, we're working with farmers and trust caterers to develop a stronger bond and a belief that the NHS can purchase from their local producers. Our regions are blessed with dairy, meat and fish, as well as our seasonal fruit and vegetables. We need to maximise the prospect of the public sector strengthening our national supply chain. We need that inspiration and courage to step out of the comfort zone. So as part of conversations with trusts and alongside the review recommendations, we need to understand and support any gap analysis for progress. What we have found out is that trusts that lead by example have a whole hospital approach. Being innovative and brave with your decisions is far easier if you've got the full support of your trust board. So we're asking catering teams to measure their current progress so they can gauge and plan their progress ahead. Remembering that a gap analysis is not a test, but a chance to flag up any concerns with board level so you can risk assess and advise accordingly. Our primary concern was to have the authority to set up the expert group. So as you can see, recommendation number 8 was vital to the success of going forward. The next slide, please. So we've recently completed the application process for the expert group. We've got our team, and that includes Prue Leith and Dr. Rupia Jula. What we've witnessed through the interview process is an aspiration to develop catering services, and the expert group have an enormous task, but what a privilege. The group is based on the principle of the power of 3, that's nursing, dietetic and caterers. They have a key role to have that practical identity of the expert group. And the link between that group and the subgroups is vital if we are to receive the quality of information. Sustainability, management of waste, carbon measured procurement, and nutritional expertise are just a few of the topics that will generate direction. Next slide, please. Our vision is to drive exemplary in all areas. Supporting those that need direction and use a whole hospital approach proves that anything is possible. When we look back, the last 15 months have woken the public's awareness of what we do in the NHS, how we do it, and what we require if we are to drive standards to a level that we can be proud of. I've met a number of managers and caterers in the NHS that are natural innovators. They're already driving change in their hospitals and their trusts. And above all, they show fantastic leadership qualities. It needs to be shared and promoted. So for example, data to drive decision-making. Same-day ordering for patients where possible should be the aim. We must also understand what our staff require in retail and vending to apply a 24/7 in reality. And we need to move on from the debate on food waste to actually have actions that matter. And part of the approach is to have that power through where possible to ensure that we have dynamic collaboration between all teams. So leading change in any sector is of course going to be stimulating. The public sector is often described as immovable. So for me, this is the ultimate challenge. And during the review process, the site visits opened our eyes up to the quality of food being produced, the openness from the teams as they welcomed us in, with no doubt some nervousness, but also the need of equipment repair and replacement. What we did experience was a consistent pride and loyalty throughout those teams. So having our first group of exemplary trusts will enable us to work closely with colleagues to test, pilot and discuss choice and options. This will strengthen the core of the review progress, and it will maintain a live picture of the pressures and the challenges that face the NHS. We know that major transformation can cost money, but for me, the biggest shift will always be behaviour and culture. The next slide, please. Our efforts towards net zero deliverables cover a number of initiatives: seasonal menu planning, meal times matters, so it's stage and occasion, and our food waste management. Recently, there has been an initiative to drive options for plant-based food in our healthcare menus. The Chefs Academy, through Nick Vardis and Supply Chain, have led a route kitchen concept, bringing to life many plant-based options that can be used initially through staff and visitor catering. There continues to be pressure across both clinical and support teams in the NHS. However, there is a constructive desire from all colleagues to drive a quality of choice in retail areas, celebrate success where appropriate, promote quality fresh food, so we buy British where possible, link with our farmers and producers, as well as understanding our regional strengths. The choice of plant-based foods, as well as the goodness supplied by our farmers and producers, is celebrated in sessions like Love British Food Fortnight at the end of September. So introducing changes in menus to stimulate engagement needs to use technology to amplify the choice available, as well as identifying allergies and nutritional information. Next slide, please. So it's time to look in the mirror, work closely with the allies within the hospital setting, as well as listening to advice from external experts in their field before making decisions. You know, we've got critical colleagues outside, and we need to give them a channel to share their concerns and ideas, so we include their ideas and their experiences. What we currently have is an alignment of energies to ensure that the National Food Strategy, Part 2, the NHS Food Standards, and the government buy-in standards are linked to the food review and the recent report from EFRA. This isn't commonplace to have an opportunity like this, but there is a willingness to ensure that we have a clarity in our direction of travel to ensure these reports and reviews are joined up. And the final slide. So being brave with our decisions, our targets, and our day-to-day objectives, it should provide an opportunity to have a longer-term vision. All that use the NHS deserve quality, food and drink, and that should be no different to anywhere else. I've always believed that this food review is driven from within the NHS, not from the outside. So strong but compassionate leadership with an ability to understand what equipment needs replacing, and is the service food model right, or does it need changing? Our communication with our patients is vital as we use the incentive to drive real change that will affect us all, whether we are procurers, producers, caterers, or those receiving our care. I hope that helps to give you a short overview. Thanks, Nathan.
Thanks, Philip. That's great. Yeah, I guess it's a minefield, it's food. And I think the biggest thing is, you know, the cultural and education part of it. Like myself, I've just begun kind of learning about it, but other people out there, and especially patients that come in, Whereas before you might get like a beef burger, for example, but now, you know, put a vegan option in front of them, and a lot of it, especially older generation, might turn that away and, you know, refuse to eat that. So you've got it's not only the food supply, but it's, you know, that obviously all the energy in that. But yeah, I think the biggest thing is that educational thing, and maybe just, you know, something, why do you need to kind of look at the meat-free options, for example, and the overall emissions strategy? Because 6% is quite a high amount of the overall emissions. I mean, where you look at energy and transport, for example, it's not easy, but there's a solution there for, you know, renewable energy and electric vehicles. Whereas food, it's very much opinionated on the patients, and it's really difficult to overcome. So, you know, that's really good. Right, Andrea, so maybe you can enlighten us some more on your vegan options, which might add, I've started eating a lot of vegan meals recently, and they're coming on leaps and bounds. And I think you wouldn't know some of the options out there. They are really tasty if you cook them well. So, yeah, over to you.
Nice to hear that you're trying some vegan options, Nathan.
Yeah.
Can you see my screen? Is that?
Not yet.
Is that shared? Yep.
No.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah. There. Oh, brilliant. Right. So thanks, Phil, for that as well. That was really interesting, and from having a background in catering as well, there's so many of the those things that I can relate to from working in catering facilities. So it's really nice to see what the hospital food review is bringing out, and some of the changes. It's really exciting. So today, what I'm going to talk about, so just to reintroduce myself, I'm Andrea, and I'm a dietitian working for the Vegan Society. And what I'm going to talk about today is one of our campaigns called Catering for Everyone. And the basis of this campaign is to get vegan food on every public sector menu. And by that, we just mean one mandatory by hospitals today.
We lost Andrea there. Are you still there, Andrea? Hello, Anne, are you still there?
Am I back? Oh, sorry. Yeah, I think my Wi-Fi just dropped out then.
Sorry. Yeah, you just move on to your next slide. So we're back. Technology.
For some reason, it's frozen from my side.
Oh, is it?
Do you want,
can you talk through it, or do you want me to try and share your?
Sorry, can you see? Are we on to the next slide now? Yeah. Okay, it's back. It's back. So just to give you an introduction of who we are. So the Vegan Society, we're a registered educational charity, and we provide information and guidance on various aspects of veganism. So we're made up, we've actually grown exponentially. So we was founded in 1944, and we've come a long way since then. Obviously, with veganism becoming more and more popular, then it's inevitable that the organisation was going to grow. And what we are continuing to do is to support the vegan philosophy, which is to exclude, as far as is possible and practicable, all forms of exploitation of and cruelty to animals for food, clothing, and any other purpose. And in dietary terms, it denotes the practice of dispensing with all products derived wholly or partly from animals. So then, just to give you sort of an insight into the Vegan Society, we're made up of several teams which are continually growing. So that's business development, where we have new products, new vegan products coming onto market, and then we've got a trademark team that can sort of certify those products. We've got a campaigns, policy and research team, and within that team there's a nutrition team consisting of 2 registered dietitians, so one of them being myself, and the senior dietitian Heather, and we've both had a background in NHS work. So, you know, we both come from an NHS setting, as with most dietitians. So we do have experience of, you know, what it's like to work in the NHS, including food provision, which is really helpful for this particular campaign. And as a society, we strive to thrive, as cheesy as that sounds. And we use evidence-based health messaging to show that well-planned vegan diets can support healthy living throughout all life stages. So we know that, you know, with a diet being well-planned, as with any diet, it can support healthy living. So what does the research suggest? So with UK statistics, we know that the number of vegans is continually growing, with the last data that being that it quadrupled between 2014 and 2019. So I think in 2014 in Great Britain, there was 150,000 vegans. And then by 2019, that's gone up to 600,000 vegans. So now we're in 2021, we can assume that figure is probably further increased. Also, what's interesting to note is that the number of vegan meals eaten at lunch or dinner soared 46% between 2019 and 2020. And I think there is evidence that has that a lot of people are using more vegan alternatives throughout the pandemic, and we do have some statistics on that as well. From a sustainability point of view, research from Oxford University has concluded that eating a plant-based diet could be the single biggest way to reduce an individual's environmental impact. And the Committee on Climate Change have directly stated that the public sector should take a strong lead in providing plant-based options in schools and hospitals. So from a health perspective, we know that well-balanced vegan diets are typically high in fruit and vegetables, low in saturated fat, which does make them sort of cardioprotective diet. So we know that somebody that's following a well-balanced vegan diet will have a reduced risk of heart disease. Also, what we also know is that people in the UK, they're not consuming enough fruit, vegetables and fibre as a whole. And we know that through the continuing rolling survey from the National Diet and Nutrition Survey, and also consuming too much saturated fat. So by sort of increasing our vegan options or sort of moving people towards more vegan diet and lifestyle, it could have a positive impact from a public health perspective. So now just to introduce the campaign, which is Catering for Everyone. So the aim of the campaign, which I've touched on briefly, is to get more and better vegan options in the public sector. So we want to see every hospital menu to contain a good quality and nutritious plant-based option every day. Reason being is that great vegan food can promote inclusivity, sustainability and good nutrition. So we know that vegan diets can support a range of people from different backgrounds. As we said, they're known as being cardioprotective, so they're good for people with high cholesterol or, you know, at risk of heart disease. So any inpatients on, for example, a cardio ward. A lot of cultural diets do sort of have vegan options within their practice. So again, it meets the needs of different cultures and different religions, as well as just anybody in general. There's no reason why anybody couldn't eat a vegan diet or have a vegan option on the menu. So Catering for Everyone in hospital, what our package does support is healthcare professionals. So it does that by increasing the awareness of supporting vegan patients, including medical nutrition. So important. So the campaign does have a lot of resources to support healthcare professionals, patients as well. So the campaign can provide support for patients, particularly with planned hospital admissions. So how to sort of let the hospital know that they are coming in and what their dietary requirements are. And we've actually got some letter templates to support that and make it easier for people that might be a bit anxious about going into hospital and not just having that vegan food provision that they do need. And also the campaign supports catering services. So there's a lot of information on menu planning, and different ingredients that you need to look out for when you are sort of creating vegan food. Finally, what we do want to sort of talk about today is our CPD accredited webinar series, which has come off the back of this campaign. And what it consists of is 3 10 to 15 minute webinars, which consists of an introduction. We'll then go on to the webinar, which goes through the nutritional standards in healthcare, and that's actually based on the nutrition and hydration document by the BDI. So it's sort of looking at how vegan diets can meet those nutritional standards, and obviously how trusts can implement that. And then the last series of the webinar is guidance for caterers or healthcare professionals. So it's actually webinar 3 is actually in 2 separate parts. So if you're from a catering service, you do that webinar, and if you're a healthcare professional, you do that webinar. So they are slightly different content, dependent on the needs of particular staff members.
That's great. Thanks, Andrea.
So, sorry, it's still on the screen, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, sorry. I thought you finished, sorry.
No, just a couple more slides to go. So now just to talk about how Catering for Everyone can help the NHS. So we as an organisation know that complaints have been raised for no available meal options for vegans in hospital. And we know this because sometimes people will contact us and just say, you know, what is the sort of protocol for NHS providing vegan meals? And we know that a lot of vegans haven't been catered for in hospital, unfortunately. And to be honest, coming from a catering background, I know that it might not necessarily be that vegan options wasn't there, or that it could be a miscommunication between different departments. And that's something that we do need to improve on, as Philip also said. And that the power of 3 bringing everybody together is something that can support that. But what are the risks associated with this? So without that vegan food provision, with somebody going into hospital that does follow a vegan diet, they're at a high risk of malnutrition by not having nutritious food available, which then can ultimately lead to a delayed recovery. And as a result of that, bed blocking, which I do hate that term, but in reality, that is what it is. And also discrimination. So whether that be direct or indirect discrimination, it is a form of discrimination by not sort of catering to somebody that does follow a vegan diet. And it's just important to note that veganism has been recognised as a protected characteristic under the 2010 Equality Act. So there is a legal obligation for public authorities to ensure that vegan provisions are available. Also, we've had interest from hospital food suppliers to use our Vegan Society nutrition resources. So we know that the demand is out there, and food suppliers are looking at increasing their vegan options. Also, as I've briefly touched on earlier, vegan food offerings do provide that inclusivity for many groups, including people with cardiovascular disease or at risk of cardiovascular disease, several different cultural diets, suitable for vegetarians. And then if we're running food from the same kitchen for staff as for patients, we could also use those vegan options for the healthy staff food option in staff canteens, which will sort of help towards those NHS sequins to promote healthier food for staff and promote that, well-being. Catering for Everyone can also provide an opportunity to educate and increase the awareness of staff and caterers, and overall improve patient outcomes, which is what we are trying to achieve as a whole. It's obviously to serve the patient and improve the outcomes and health outcomes. And then I've just like to point out a quote that was, it was Plant-Based Week a few weeks ago, and that was run by the public sector catering. And Brian Robb, who's the chair of the Healthcare Caterers Association, just quoted in one of his 60-second interviews that there's a requirement for an appropriate and effective education programme to be in place to ensure support exists for a plant-based diet, ensuring good health is maintained, We also need to ensure that we engage our client base and continue to educate our staff, both in production and front of house. And the reason why I've just chosen to put that quote up there is just that this Catering for Everyone and this CPD webinar series can actually help to support that. So we know that there's a need there, and we're here to sort of support that need and improve patient outcomes in NHS settings. So how can you get involved? So for more information on Catering for Everyone, you can visit our Catering for Everyone campaigns page on our website, thevegansociety.com. And if you are interested to find out more about the CPD webinar series, you can just contact campaigns@vegansociety.com. And then there's just some screenshots of what that webinar series looks like. So you've got webinar 1, the introduction, webinar 2, which is nutritional standards in healthcare, webinar 3, which is guidance for caterers or guidance for healthcare professionals. And there's just some examples there of case studies and how we go about menu planning for the nutritional requirements in illness. So that's just a snapshot of the campaign. And I've just left some links there for further information.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Andrea. Yeah, some really interesting stuff there. And, I think one thing in particular is where you say the biggest thing anybody can do to reduce their carbon footprint is to go on a vegan-based diet, especially today with the Day of Action, for all those NHS staff out there watching, switch, or even just try and switch. If everyone loves meat, and I did in particular, but when there's obviously documentaries out there, I'm sure everyone's seen Seaspiracy and whatnot, and it kind of really makes you think about what foods you eat. And then if you look at the growing population as well, in future years and climate change, there's not enough room on the earth to kind of have livestock. So you've got to look to plant-based options. And there's really interesting technology in vertical farming, and that's going to be massive. And, so the supply all year round of plant-based and really healthy fruit and veg options that could be grown within city centres. That's really good. And I said before, there's some really nice options out there. I've been in a few cafes recently, and I've kind of shied away from a fry up, but there's a vegan option instead, and they look equally nice. And put a bit of HP sauce on there, and it's lovely. But then you've got the curries and everything. You've got to get creative with what's in there. So I think some of the products aren't always nice on their own, but if you make a nice recipe with them, then it's good. And a lot of athletes as well are turning to a vegan-based diet, and it's
So we're obviously recognizing that a lot of different groups are sort of turning to vegan diets, or even not flexitarian diets, so just eating less meat, having meat 3 days in the week. So just by having a mandatory plant-based option every day, at least we can serve the needs of a lot of different population groups.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There was something on Forest Green Football Club as well recently. They have the world's most sustainable football club, and they've switched the players to a vegan-based diet, and as a result, their performance has improved. They've been promoted, and there's some really interesting stats. Even the players themselves say, "No, we've got so much energy, and we're so much better. Think clear," and it's really interesting. Just to put it out there, guys, we've got a Q&A open for the panelists. So we've got a few questions coming through. So I'll go Jason Light. This is for you, Philip, I think. So it's the food review talks about considering procurement standards in the supply chain, but should it be more explicit that the menu should be designed to reduce the embodied GHG, as this will be the only way to tackle this?
Well, the short answer is yes. But I think it's important to understand that when you write menus in the NHS, you've got the involvement of suppliers, you've got national, regional, trust, hospital site. It is complicated, and I think we all want to reduce emissions. It's very target led, but there needs to be a practical reality about how we take that forward. And I know there's a great deal of work going on right now to ensure that, first of all, through our 14 exemplar trusts, which is going to extend to 30 in the next couple of weeks, and that's spread out throughout the country, we can start to pilot different ways of menu planning and taking into consideration how we link with our suppliers through the procurement. What we didn't want to do in the food review is counteract what the National Food Strategy is doing, as well as the government buying standards. So we are working really closely with DEFRA to ensure that we all stay aligned and we all kind of make that journey together. We all want to drive our emissions down. So that is what will happen. We know that there's been plenty of target setting, by the government, by the NHS, and by suppliers themselves, and there's one or two that are really leading the way. So it's important that we've got some momentum. Let's drive that forward as best as we can. And for me personally, it is about working with trusts to ensure that they're given the support that they need to get themselves in the best place possible.
No, that's great. Thanks, Philip. I hope that answers the question. And we have another one from Nicola Daly. The recommendations to introduce digital ordering systems and trying to remove any barriers to this. What would you say the argument that digital ordering isn't suitable for all healthcare environments, for example, on mental health wards?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And we take that into consideration. What we want to do is use digital and use data to drive results. And often, for example, a laminated large print menu. There are other forms of menus that need to be used as well. They can be there and they can be for patients to look at either in their own time or looking further ahead, because everyone's very different. They like to plan as well. They don't always want to look just 1 hour ahead. They want to look further ahead and plan their days, so that ability needs to be there. The digital part of it is around when we actually order it. And we want to order food as close to the point of service as possible, so it minimizes the waste. So it captures lots of information, but what we don't want to do is have an ordering system that becomes complicated for patients. It needs to be patient driven, but we also need to be aware that there are ways that we can emphasize our sustainability and our cost controls.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, good answer. So just on the waste, obviously we spoke about vegan options and the supply of vegan options reducing emissions, but how about the waste of food? Are there any plans in there to reduce that? And obviously the ordering system is a good way around that. Are there any other ways that we could look at reducing the waste? Because obviously I think a lot of emissions are attributed to the waste itself.
Yeah, the challenge is to everybody, isn't it? It's the challenges in our own home. Yeah. It's in our schools, our universities, all the way across the public sector. And I think we have to look at every part of the chain. How do we buy? For me, it is about buying quality over quantity. This sort of buy one, get one free. It may seem a great offer. Most of the time you end up throwing the free one away. Yeah. So it is really about the way we buy, the way we menu plan, the way we prepare our food. Don't over prepare, and think about quality. And then when we serve food, it is not about the amounts that we serve, but it is around that quality and having the choice available. What I think we recognize in the NHS is that there is a high amount of food wastage. We understand that through things like medication and through recovery, there will always be a waste, but what is the percentage that we feel is appropriate? Yeah. And I think we can drive that down, Nathan. There's no doubt about that. So we also need to think as well about the way we dispose of our waste. Yeah. So we've moved away from the sort of the whole pig bin scenario, but what we need to think about is how can we dispose of our waste in a way also that we can digitally recognize how much are we throwing away. So if you've got 20 wards and you've got 10 wards that are throwing away 3%, and then you've got another 5 throwing away 15%, your focus needs to be on those wards to find out why is so much waste coming from that area to drill down some results.
Yeah, it's one thing my granddad always said when I was a kid. He always say, "Eat your meals." And he bursting at the seams. He can't possibly eat anymore. And then there's people starving. So yeah, but I can't eat anything. Eat until you're full. But yeah, it is a problem. I think like smaller portions and more. Yeah, if you say a better choice rather than, my wife said the other day, I was talking about this, and she got a greasy hamburger just floating in, some horrible gravy. She didn't want to eat it. Whereas my mother-in-law was in hospital. She had lovely food. She ate it all. So it's, it's like you say, the quality over the quantity, and kind of measure it that way. But yeah,
and I think it's important, the recording as well. So I know plate waste is obviously a big impact, but you've got to look at sort of your stock rotation as well. So making sure that you're not throwing away stuff that's out of date. How much are you ordering? So there's a lot of sort of things that go into food waste, not just plate waste. And I think having that documentation and monitoring it regularly, then you can sort of pick up those trends, can't you, and see where you're going wrong, and that's when you can work out the improvements.
Very true.
No, absolutely. I've got another question from Alexis. Hi, Alexis. Are there any tools around to give catering managers assessment of the distances and carbon footprint of food supplied?
Directly, no, because there are a range of tools that are out there. So I wouldn't want to put my stamp on one particular. But we are working very closely with the food standard strategy document that's being written now to actually have that available in the future. I'm very wary that the targets that are being set needs us to sort of run at a pace that is appropriate. And otherwise, that sort of race to the top scenario is great. But what will happen is we will leave people behind because they will not be able to cope with it. We've certainly, on an NHS point of view, we've got to take people with us on this. And they've all got to understand there's no good us thinking, we've got over 220 trusts in England. There's no good us taking 100 with us. We need everyone to come with us on this. And if it means it's slightly slower, that's what we will do. So we're working with the government buy-in standards and with the food standards and strategy team to ensure that the tools will be in place at the appropriate time. Sorry that it's not available right now. Yeah, no, I mean, Alexis, I might be able to help with that because I run a print company, as most people know, and we're looking at the kind of scope 3 emissions of like our goods that come in. We've addressed kind of the solar energy and all the energy renewables, and which are the obvious things, but we're now looking at the supply chain, and we're working with companies to kind of look at the carbon footprint of the materials coming in. So maybe they're a Leeds-based company, Alexis, called Green Gain, and they may be able to help with that in some respect. But yeah, it's a tall order, especially with NHS. I mean, where one factory in Leeds is quite easy compared to 223 trusts around the UK monitoring everything that's going on there. It's a very tall order.
So we've got a carbon, one of our campaigns through the Vegan Society is called Plate Up for the Planet. And we've actually got sort of a digital carbon footprint calculator available on the website. But I can totally understand how difficult it is for suppliers to use this, because obviously your ingredients could be coming from anywhere. If you can't get it from that place, but 1 week you might have to get your tomatoes from Spain or something another week, and then automatically that carbon footprint that you've labelled that product as is out of date. So there's a lot that sort of goes into calculating that carbon footprint of a food product, and I suppose it's really difficult to standardise for food suppliers. Yeah, but if you did want to personally look at the carbon footprint of your own meal, then you can use that carbon footprint calculator on our website. That's interesting, and I think that's where maybe the future of vertical farming will come in. Growing fruit and vegetables on your doorstep and locally, and it could be massive. And like I mentioned before, all year round, it's really exciting stuff. And I know George is doing a lot of work on webinars with sustainable tech and things like that. It's really interesting to see. We've got another question from Chloe Hatton. What could environmental bodies, e.g. DEFRA, Natural Resources Wales and environmental NGOs, do to support the health sector on the sustainable food agenda? For example, somehow supporting connecting trust to local producers? That's a great question. I mean, one of the big things, and Andrea's already spoken about it, and through her presentation, she mentioned other bodies that the Vegan Society are linking into.
There is no more important time than right now to stay aligned to what our targets are. So I would ask anyone that wants to link into the NHS right now is to write directly into me, and they'll either come to Emma Brooks and myself in NHS England and Improvement. We'll link them with a net zero team in NHS. So we are driving forward to ensure that all conversations are heard. It is so important right now that everyone feels they've got a voice, and we need to listen to that voice. So when we move forward, we have got them with us. So there's such a wide range that have an influence in the NHS about how we purchase and how we actually cook and deliver our food. So it's important that we listen to those. So if anyone wants to write to me direct, then I'm happy to either link them into the work that we're doing through our subgroups in our expert, because that includes all of those organizations that were mentioned, or if there's anyone that we've missed, then I'm happy to link up with them.
That's great. I mean, both these guys are on LinkedIn as well for anybody who wants to connect and ask questions, or come to myself and Georgia, we can give you an introduction. We've got another from Alexis. Has Philip got any contacts in Yorkshire for any of the 14 exemplar organisations leading on this catering agenda?
Yes. If she'd like to contact me direct, I'll link her with the two that are up in that region. And in the next couple of weeks, we'll also have another couple that we're linking into. So, yeah, happy to talk to Alexis about that. No problem.
Okay, and one more from Jason Light. I think I've got this. Just by the way, follow up. Yep. We know that some ingredients have high embodied carbon, such as out of season UK tomatoes or cows. Surely the only way to tackle the 6% of emissions is to minimise the use of these ingredients as much as possible. And yeah, totally agree. Yeah, it is. As we've all said, it is about thinking before we buy in, isn't it? It takes a bit more time, but I think for us, if I was a catering manager in NHS right now, I think I'd start with a blank piece of paper and actually think what has happened before has happened. What we now need to think is our menus and our purchasing. We need to think differently. Link with your procurement team, link with your sustainability manager, and start to plan ahead for now and for the future. So you may not get to your, target now, but what you can do is work towards it. And it is about, using your local producers as much as you can. We're in fantastic parts of the country where we've got everything that we need. There will be times of the year where we have to buy further, but you need to plan that. And it may mean that the seasonal menus help you to minimize purchasing further afield. So planning. Yeah, no, absolutely. No, couldn't agree more. Well, I think that's all the questions from the panel, from the guests, should I say. So I think we'll wind it up there, unless you two have anything to add. You've been fantastic and really insightful discussions there, and very interesting. Like I say, it's a minefield. And Philip, you've got a tall order in your job. You're doing a great job. It's good to see the NHS are actively looking, and addressing the situation. As I say, 6% is a big volume of emissions just from food. So it's great that you are looking at it, and I think the future is bright if everyone. And like Andrea, the vegan society, and a bit more education, especially on the millennials. Like I said before, a lot of the amount of vegans kind of converted in the last 6 years, or so it's increasing, and it can only be a good thing. So no, well, thank you.
Change that stereotype as well.
Yeah.
Well,
I've been challenged.
Everybody can enjoy, as yourself. You've surprised yourself by
I have.
Sort of enjoying those vegan options. So.
Yeah, I've just gone off tuna completely. I'm just looking at beef now, thinking, do I get a beef Sunday roast, or do I get something else? And it's because of what I've been watching. It's like, I don't know how true it is. I'm guessing it's quite factual, but it's quite frightening. And I think if a few other people did watch it, you would certainly change your mind. And like I said before, it's about the future of the earth, and whereas like fossil fuels and things get all the bad press. Try taking a look at agriculture. That's all I'll say. Yeah.
No, it's great to be involved today, Nathan. And there are, there's some big targets, but it's a really, really exciting topic right now. And I think as a country, we've got a great opportunity. Not just the NHS public sector, but for families as well. Think about what we buy, think about who we support, and it needs to be driven by our own health and well-being. And that's been no more important during the recent challenges. So it's a great topic, and it will continue to drive forward.
Absolutely. Right, well, thank you both very much. So that's us done for nutrition. The next webinar is back to Georgia at 3:30, I believe, and we're looking at energy. We've got some great guests on there, so do tune in. And thank you both once again. It's been fantastic. And thank you everyone who's been watching. I hope you find it insightful. Let's say reach out to myself and Georgia. I'm no expert, but these guys are, so you can kind of ask them questions and get in touch directly. Right, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
See you all.